Welcome everybody to A Guide to Wanderlust. My name's Ben,
My name's Laura.
and today we're going to share with you the tips on how to slow travel. So in our previous video, we talked about what slow travel is, and today we're going to give you some tips on how to slow travel. First on the list is choose a destination. Obviously this one is a big key factor. You want to know where you're going to go. What are some of the things that we've thought about before we've actually decided to choose our next destination?
So I think when we first decided to leave Australia and start slow travelling, we really went with what was available at the time because there were a lot of travel restrictions in place. And we went with Thailand because we had the option of being teachers over there. So I think that's really what prompted our first move.
And we'd been there before, and we'd always said that we wanted to be there.
And we thought going somewhere, especially for that first stop, going somewhere that you're comfortable with, I think is really good, as opposed to just complete shock being somewhere you're not familiar with. So I think...
And it was a good place to start for us because...
It was a launching pad.
Yeah, and it was a lot cheaper than like Australia is. So we knew that if we were staying there that we'd be able to get cheaper accommodation and food, and it wouldn't be such a shock financially as well. I mean, we did sell everything and we went with some money over there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we wanted to burn it all because it could very well happen quite quickly.
Yeah. So I think that was our initial sort of thought process when we first looked at a destination. But that's changed since then. So back then we didn't know that we were actually going to have the option to be digital nomads and to work online. So we needed something that was going to have a way to bring in some income. Things have changed since then. We're now obviously full-time digital nomads. So now we choose a destination really based on the number one point on this blog, which is, visa considerations. So what country are we going to be able to get into and not have to leave 4 weeks later? Where can we go and take a little bit of time to explore? So countries that have 3-month tourist visa, for example, are really good to get into because for that 3 months you're not going to have to stress about leaving or visa extensions.
Yeah, and the stress of travel is just so intense that once you actually finally move, and if you're doing it for the first time, you really do want to relax. And we did speak about that in our previous video, which I'll set a link up above. You want to have that break to just relax, and 3 months is a long time, especially if you've never been away from home for that long. And the idea of not having to deal with visa stuff is just such a great thing, isn't it? Because once it does come up, and to all the expats and all the other nomads we've spoken about, it's just a really intense time. Even the months leading up to it are very, very stressful, aren't they?
Yeah, some of our worst experiences while we've been travelling has been around visa issues.
And they were the first worst lessons that we learned.
Yeah, we learned some really hard lessons in the first few months and ended up overstaying our Thai visas, not due to any fault. We tried to leave and we couldn't. That's a whole nother story. But that caused a lot of stress because we'd never overstayed a visa before and, worrying about getting arrested on the side of the road and things like that. So it very quickly became, I think, a very key factor in our decisions about where to choose a location.
I mean, you can't slow travel if you can't stay for very long, can you? So
No, you're very, if your visa only gets you 1 month, then that's not going to be slow travel because you've got to be out of there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next on the list is selecting a destination with like-minded travellers. For us, it wasn't actually that obvious in the beginning, but then over time, as we've developed our skills, it's actually become one of our key points to choosing where we're going to go. So, I mean, I'll let you handle this because you're the one who finds the places on Facebook groups and forums and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I found it much harder in countries that didn't speak, English as a first language. So in Thailand, it was really hard and felt quite isolating. We were in an area in far north Thailand, Chiang Rai, and there were not many expats there. So it was quite hard to build a community with people, and we didn't speak Thai. So we tried to make friends with people, but it was very hard to sort of break through that language barrier. And then we, a few months into our stay there, we actually linked up with a church and made some awesome friends through there. And that was, it just made everything so much nicer to have some people around you, people that were also foreign and, there for, a similar reason to us. It was really nice. So, and then, it's much easier for us, it's much easier in English-speaking countries being in London. It was much easier to find friends with people who lived there, not just travellers. So your options sort of open up in terms of what you can join in.
And the best way to do that we found was if you just go onto Facebook and you type in, this destination, say like Thailand or Chiang Rai or Chiang Mai and then say like expats or digital nomads, you will find a whole bunch of groups that will just have people essentially talking about not only like where's the best place to stay, but like day-to-day stuff, like where's the best place to eat, you know, this is the person that got me my accommodation, this is the person that can help me with my visa, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's hands down been the best way to link up with community groups in the community, has been through Facebook groups, and we'll definitely share our tips on that, because I think that's its own sort of post and information worth sharing. Yep. So what I've learned through that has taken me, it's taken me time to sort of learn how to link up with different people and make friends while you travel. So that post will certainly be coming too.
Yeah. Next on the list is avoid expensive accommodation. This is kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? When you're traveling long term, you don't want to be staying at expensive places, do you? And I find that when you land somewhere, it's fine to be spending the money to land and settle in for that initial week. And then once you can start to move around and go to your actual destination where you're going to stay, then that's when you decrease the cost. Like, that's how we've generally done it, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. That first week or two is always going to be, your budget's going to be blown out by, at least 4 times what it is. And you just have to suck it up, because, while you're new to the place, you're not going to know the best modes and cheapest modes of transport, food options, accommodation. You're going to potentially be booking hotels or Airbnbs, which are always going to be more expensive, while you find your longer term accommodation.
Sri Lanka was a really good example for us. We had some accommodation potentially like set up as a rental, but that wasn't coming for a couple of weeks because the people needed to vacate. So we had to, burn some cash for the first 2 weeks in much more expensive accommodation until that became available, and then we just cut our costs probably in half, well and truly. After that,
less than that. Yeah, the first 2 weeks was $600 per week for the 2 weeks of accommodation, so $1,200. Then after that, we got into a place which was a short to long term rental, and that was $300 a month.
Yeah.
So you go from $600 a week to $300 a month. I mean,
And the way we've thought about it is if we were going to tighten up from our day-to-day budget, like on our accommodation, then we could go sightseeing and spend more money if we decided to travel within the country.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And spend a bit more money on, going to dinners out and things like that. So it's just where your priorities are. I mean, the accommodation for $10 a night was very basic, but...
It was hot, we had air conditioning, it was somewhere to sleep. And most of the rest of the time we were, like, out at the pool or the beach down at the local hotel or something, weren't we? So... Yeah,
absolutely. So, we've definitely got some tips for that too.
Yeah. Next on the list is don't rush. So as tourists, we often have like a very small amount of time to travel and see everything. We've got a really tight schedule. But when we become slow travelers, we have that extended period of time. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we should schedule more in, but just relax. We're not going home after this. We're going to move to the next place, and we might even be coming back. So I find that, it does take some time to stop rushing. But once you actually start getting in the flow of it, taking your time, experiencing the culture, and just kind of living and experiencing everything, it just becomes like really natural and enjoyable, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you get to just actually, enjoy that quality time and just chill out a little bit, not have your itinerary full.
Yeah, and you didn't come overseas to act or live the same life as the one you did back home, where everything was frantic. You had events and you had mortgage and bills to pay and things like that. It's about unwinding and spending time together, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of my previous holidays I went on, I wanted to see everything while I was there in whatever location, and then you go home needing another holiday because you're so tired that you got to go home and you got to go back to work, and that was just happened to me every single time, and I wouldn't take the time to relax.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, like often for that first week or two of any holiday, I was so overworked by that stage that I would often then get sick, in that week or two of decompressing. And it was just, whereas this kind of lifestyle, you don't have that, do you?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So next on the list is immerse yourself in the culture and act like a local. So when you travel typically as a tourist, you do get that superficial experience when you're going out because you are seeing the sights, you are interacting with the locals. But when you're staying there long term, you do tend to, start to meet some people, even if you don't necessarily speak their language. We had our favourite Thai restaurant at the end of our street, which did $1 meals, and they loved having us, and they were always so kind to us. We had amazing neighbours. You get that more authentic experience, and you spend that time, immersing yourself in the culture, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So next on the list is volunteer and find work. So this isn't always the easiest thing to do, but it is a great way to connect with other people on their travels, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the more things that you can join in, the more people you're going to meet, the easier it is to make friends and also give back to the communities that you're visiting. Yeah.
I think that when you decide to travel this way for the first time, you will find that you have more time on your hands because you aren't scheduled to 9 to 5 work days plus activities after work. You'll most likely, as a digital nomad, probably get through a lot of your work in 3 to 4 hours because it's such deep and intensive work that you'll have all this free time. For a lot of people that can be a little unsettling, especially coming back from being so busy all the time. So having volunteering is a great way to give back to the community that you're staying in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, it opens up the opportunity for learning as well, and just feeling like you've got a purpose and filling your time up as well if you've got a lot of free time and setting those roots in as well and meeting new people in the community. And you can always come back and then those people will know you, which is the coolest part. Yeah, I think it's really valuable. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching. There are our tips on how to slow travel.
So if you're interested in following our journey, we also have an Instagram page, a guide to Wanderlust, and a website, a guide to wanderlust.com, which also has blogs and updates, and we'll be sharing these videos on as well, so you can follow along with our tips and tricks and how we live this lifestyle, really. And so thanks for joining us. This is a guide to Wanderlust, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.